Invest it in the United States of America.
Okay.
Once again, this is not financial advice, but the United States of America.
Oh, wake up, rethink the status quo. When you get your money right, then you're the one who runs your life. Come build a wealthy spirit with Sammie and Michelle.
So, Michelle, at the Deep Talk that you recently missed,
Wow.
things got a little controversial.
Deep Talk is a meetup we go to with our friends, people who have become our friends over the last year, where we're able to go deep on conversations and skip the small talk, which I love, and I'm very sad to have missed this one. But I was traveling to Portland. Shout out to my girlfriends.
We were talking about people's ability to build wealth. And it got controversial because, of course, everybody has a different ability to build wealth depending on their circumstances. But one thing a lot of us could agree on was if you know the steps to build wealth, it's actually not that complicated. The steps are simple. It's just whether you are able to do them at that time or not. What I appreciated is that everybody might not know those steps. I want to make sure that they know them because it could change your life.
Not just anybody, Sammie. Me and you. We did not grow up with a crazy foundation of basic finance. And what I've learned through doing this podcast over the past 3 years is a lot of people don't. And I had good exposure to things like how the economy works. But that's not necessarily helpful when it comes to breaking it down into simple steps on how to get rich, or at least start building financial stability in your life so that you can start going after whatever your goal is. Sure, it might be wealthy, but maybe it's something else. Maybe you want to travel more. Maybe you want to take some time off so you can spend time with your kids. We have heard so many people who listen to this podcast be able to shift their lives, and we love to hear it because our lives changed because we honestly found out a couple small tweaks we could make so that we could start to build wealth and start focusing our energy on things that bring us joy.
And today, we are going to share those with you.
Let's get into it. But first, if you find yourself in a situation where you are listening to this podcast, you're hearing Sammie and I talk about sabbaticals, and you or someone you know are considering going on a sabbatical, and you want to be part of a little community who's preparing themselves, getting in the right frame of mind, shifting into a sabbatical mindset, I highly recommend, no biases, my course that Toby and I will be launching at the end of September. After our last session, after catching up with the people who took our course and hearing how they were doing such cool things, they're taking chocolate making classes, they're marrying people at City Hall, they're becoming realtors, they're just exploring their interest and doing all of these really cool activities. Toby and I were really excited to launch Cohort 2. So check the link in our show notes. If you or somebody you know is off work, intentionally or not, take a second, look at the course, and shoot it over to them. You'll find the link in our show notes. Back to our topic. 3 steps to get rich.
Before we start, I really wanted to do this episode because I feel like the information out there is so convoluted. But I have to say,
this is not financial advice.
This is not financial advice.
Oh, yes. This is not financial advice. This is an entertainment podcast only. This is for funsies. Haha, giggles. Go talk to a lawyer, a financial advisor, your priest, whoever you need to go and get financial advice from. This is not it. That being said, we're excited to share in our entertainment podcast some tips that we have found helpful.
So I've broken down today's get rich steps into 3 simple steps. I want to keep it as simple as possible and as short as possible. There's ways to make this more confusing, and there's ways to go into more detail, but those more details don't necessarily equivocate to more wealth. What we're telling you today is what we feel from an entertaining perspective is the most important things you need to know.
Yes, agreed. Hey, if you love this and you want to nerd out, we'll share links to anything we talk about in our show notes. And it's a fun rabbit hole to go down. Sammie, you know what this all reminds me of? It's maybe 2016, maybe 2018. We are in Vienna.
It was 2018, November, I remember.
November 2018.
When my journey began.
When Sammie's journey began, we were at our friend Marina's house. She is working this cool job. She has an apartment. She's renting out the room. Her and her husband are growing plants. Sammie's looking around. And what are you thinking, Sammie?
I am thinking they have a higher plan. My friend Marina is super smart. God put her in my life. And I knew that all these little things she was doing was related to something. And that's when she said, "Have you heard of FIRE? Financial Independence, Retire Early."
Have you heard the good news?
She told me the good news, and let me tell you, completely changed my life.
Now, I know, Sammie, this episode isn't focused specifically on FIRE, but one of the reasons I really like the financial independence movement is because they're not actually attached to an organization or a specific person. It's just people who are really excited about this concept. They do the best job of breaking down how you can just do simple steps to build wealth. And I'm so happy, grateful for our friend Marina because she changed the trajectory of our lives.
Exactly, Michelle. So let's dive in. Step number 1 is save more than 10% of your income. To be honest, if you're saving 10% of your income, especially if you start at a relatively young age, you are probably going to get rich and be able to retire early. If you do more than 10%, you will be able to retire quicker. You will be financially independent more quickly.
But Sammie, does it matter how much money you make?
Doesn't matter how much money you make, no. It doesn't. Because it matters how much you spend. And Mr. Money Mustache has a great article where he goes into detail about this. It's called The Shockingly Simple Math. If you're in the FIRE community, this is the article. And he gives different savings rate percentages and different amount of working years until retirement. For example, if you're saving 10% of your income, your working year until retirement is 51 years. Whereas if you're saving 50% of your income, your working years until retirement is 17 years. The reason this is because your spending makes a big difference in how early you will be able to retire. If you don't spend a lot of money, you don't necessarily need a lot of money to live forever. By that same token, as somebody who works in healthcare, let me tell you, you can make a lot of money and spend it all. I've worked with so many medical professionals who make tons of money and spend it all, are in debt on top of that. We are notorious for that. We literally get targeted by financial advisors to buy all kinds of crazy plans just because they know we're irresponsible with our money.
Financial advisors and the FIGS movement, designer scrubs.
Yes. FIGS comes after us because they know we're irresponsible.
You know, what about Gucci scrubs? I feel like actual designer scrubs would do very well.
It's possible.
Sammie, I think the point you're making is so important here. It's twofold. One, you want to be able to save money. Save more than you spend. See if you can save more than 10%. And at different income levels, this can be challenging for different reasons. I think when I was first starting out, I remember overdrafting while I was in my training, partially because I was irresponsible, but also because I had a lot of payments coming up. I had to pay a deposit on my rent. I had to pre-book all the travel for my trip. And I think it was actually nice that it happened for me then, because I started to realize, okay, I can't just spend money without actually being conscientious of what's going in and what's going out. On the flip side, I have also seen exactly what you said too, which is people can make 6 figures. They can make $1 million, to be honest. And if you spend it all, if you're buying a house, if you're buying the nicest car, if you're buying a yacht, buying a boat, if these are things that you don't value and you're spending so much money on them, you can literally go down zero to your paycheck every single month. People with tons of money are living paycheck to paycheck, which is insane to me. But it happens because lifestyle creep is real. So I think you're right. I think as simple as it sounds, if you can get yourself into a place where you are saving money, if you're saving more than you're spending, you can start to plant the seeds for building wealth.
It's true, Michelle. When I found out about FIRE, I was saving some money into my retirement accounts. Honestly, mostly on accident. But otherwise, I was spending down my entire paycheck. I remember one time we were at dinner and I was like, let me check my checking account to see if I need to transfer money to make the payment. And that was so unnecessary because I was making plenty of money. I did not need to be at dinner checking my accounts to see which card I should use to pay for things. But I just did not know any better. Like, I legitimately did not even think of any other reason to save money. But it was the end of 2018, so it was really 2019 when I started this journey of financial independence, and I started saving 50% of my income or more. I did have to make some lifestyle changes to do that. For a while, I moved in with my parents. Ultimately, I moved to the middle of nowhere to take a job that paid double. And I'm not completely financially independent yet, but I'm probably 60 to 75% of the way there. And that was only 5 years ago. So it is possible. The chart that Mr. Money Mustache has is actually quite conservative. The US economy often does better than that. So if you start this journey now, who knows? You may be able to retire much, much earlier than you think. Like, we're talking within 10 years.
Now, step 2. You're saving money. You're starting to realize, okay, maybe I can put a little bit aside. Now what?
Perfect question, Michelle. Yes, save a little bit of money, whether you want a 1 month, 3 month, 1 year emergency fund, just to kind of make you feel comfortable. But then with the rest of that money, invest it. Invest it in the United States of America.
Okay.
Once again, this is not financial advice, but the United States of America.
Okay, I want to take a second and put the brakes on. First off, really important, make sure you have an emergency fund. So if something happens, you don't have to necessarily panic. Like, security first and foremost. 3 months is the general recommendation. You know, your girls, Sammie and Michelle, we tend to like a little bit more, but that is definitely not financial advice. But the key too is that saving your money in your savings account, under your mattress, if you were like our aunt when she passed away, is not necessarily going to grow your money. And it also means that your money will start to depreciate against inflation. So you do want to save your money, but like Sammie says, then you want to start looking at a beautiful thing called index funds.
Yes. And I'm saying this because at the meeting, we were talking about different ways we were investing. And one of the people there mentioned that she invested in Bitcoin, which, you know, depending on when you do it and when you sell, might be a win. But there's actually a reliable way to invest with reasonable security, and that is index funds. When we say index funds, we are talking about a set of stocks that includes the top, typically 500, sometimes top 1,000 companies in the United States of America.
Exactly. To quote Investopedia, are defined as investments that mirror the performance of benchmarks like the S&P 500 by mimicking their makeup. So this is not a fund of Nancy Pelosi's best bets, okay? This is specific to mimicking the U.S. economy's biggest companies.
So with index funds, they pick the top however many companies, and then they regularly change it out to update to match the U.S. economy. So is the U.S. economy 100% of the time doing well? No. Sometimes there's downturns, like 2008.
Like last week.
Like last week, already better. But if you look over long periods of time, like if you look over 10 years or more, you can see that that line is up and to the right, meaning always increasing.
Yeah. And while past performance cannot predict future performance, and really why we say this isn't financial advice, the reason this is recommended is because Like Sammie said, the 500 companies change over time. So let's say Microsoft is doing really well right now. It is well represented in things like the index funds that mimic the S&P 500. Let's say 10 years from now, Microsoft is gone. It didn't work out. Bill Gates messed up. Who knows what'll happen? They will take it out of, long before that happens, hopefully, they will take it out of the actual index funds. And they will replace it with whatever company is doing well. So that's what actually makes it a safer bet. As a contrasting example, when I was talking to somebody who, let's say, smoked a little bit too much weed, and he told me that I should definitely invest in marijuana stocks because marijuana is going to be legalized. He should have said this is not financial advice. I guess he didn't tell me to invest in it, but I thought, oh my gosh, you're so right. I'm so ahead of this. No. I bought the stocks. They immediately plummeted forever. They're still worth nothing. Apparently, it's not that hard to grow marijuana. So in my situation, the company basically, they didn't go bankrupt. I have no idea how they're still afloat, but they are definitely worth nothing. And that's why buying an individual stock is a much bigger risk than investing in the S&P 500. That's why buying an individual cryptocurrency is a much greater risk, because at the end of the day, you're putting all of your eggs in one basket and they can go to zero. It's gambling. If you have dumpster fire money that you want to gamble, go ahead. But do not put your lifetime supply in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 individual stocks.
Preach. And you might be wondering where you're investing this money. There are your tax-advantaged accounts through work. So that's your 401k, or outside of work, most people have access to a Roth IRA. The great thing about these accounts is they either offer a tax break when you're initially putting your money in, if it's pre-tax, or when you're taking out your money, including tax breaks on the gains for Roth accounts. So those are great options because of that. But I do not want people to forget about just investing in your regular post-tax brokerage accounts. I know that sounds like a fancy word. Your tax-advantaged accounts through work and your Roth IRA, those are great, but for the most part, you could not access that money until you are near retirement age.
And they're capped.
Exactly, and they're capped. So there's a limit to how much you can invest in those accounts. Take advantage of them as much as you can, but also put some money aside from yourself. Money that came through your paycheck and was taxed. Take some of that money and put it into an investment account of your own. Whether that's in a Charles Schwab account, Fidelity, Vanguard, any of these companies, you can open a brokerage account. All that means is that's money you're investing on your own. It doesn't have any special tax advantages, but it is money that if a year from now you want to access it, you can pull it out without any penalties. You'll still pay taxes, but you don't have to pay any penalties.
Step number 3.
Step number 3, know your numbers. And I'll be honest, you don't even have to know step number 3, because if you do 1 and 2, you're still going to get rich. You just will have no idea what that means. But step number 3 is just to give you a concept of what this means and to help you keep track.
I don't know, Sammie. I'm on the flip side. I'm like, if you just do step number 3, if you just know your numbers, I feel like the inertia would slowly make you, well, I guess you could spend all your money on Bitcoin.
You know, you make a good point. If you know step number 3, you're going to be motivated to figure out 1 and 2 somehow on your own. But when we say know your numbers, we are talking about number 1, knowing your FI number, your financial independence number, your retirement number. This is your annual spending times 25. It's based on the Trinity study. We'll link to it in the show notes. We have done episodes on this number, so we'll link to that in the show notes. But suffice it to say that if you take however much you spend annually, let's say it was $60,000, and you times that by 25, then you get 1.5 million, and that's your retirement number.
So that means if you have $1.5 million invested in something like an index fund, you will be able to draw 4% of that every year after you retire. And ideally, the plan is that you're good to go.
Exactly. This number is so useful to know because it gives you a goal of where you're headed towards. Of course, maybe your spending changes year to year, but you know on average how much you're spending, or you can start to keep track of that. And you can even start to rein it in a little bit so you can adjust your FI number. But knowing these numbers gives you an idea of where you're at.
Sammie, I like what you're saying because I think knowing your numbers, like knowing your FI number, is so important. But if you are intimidated by that math by any means, even just go to your bank account, go and pull the last month's spend and start tracking how much you're spending a month. It's a little thing and it doesn't feel like a big deal. But I remember when I was tracking my spending once I started, I would feel guilty about little purchases, like buying an extra t-shirt. And then I realized that a lot of my spending would go to things like fixing my car, buying a new cell phone. Tracking your spend annually really gives you a sense of what those big pain points actually are. And that's when you can start to make changes. Do I want to spend less on the shirt? Or is there something I can do with my car to lower those costs? Because that's worth like 3 shirts and maybe 3 years in my FI life.
Exactly, Michelle. You're thinking right. I also put your Coast FI number on this list. Your Coast FI number is when you have enough money today that will grow for retirement. So like, let's say you're 30 years old, you have enough money saved such that when you're 65, that will be enough money to allow you to retire, but you still need money to pay for your bills, day-to-day bills, until your retirement age. We did an entire episode on this number, which I'll link to in the show notes. But this number is helpful to know because this is when you can really change the game as far as how you're working less hours, changing the type of work that you're doing. Once you have enough money saved for retirement, you should rethink work and how you're approaching work because there's no reason to be grinding until retirement if you could have calmed down at age 30. That will significantly change the quality of your life.
Takeaways.
Takeaways for this episode. Sammie, this reminds me something that I think is really important. Getting rich is not sexy. It's simple. Very big difference.
It's not sexy at all, but it is sexy in how simple it is.
That's what's much more relieving to me. I don't want to have to figure out what's the hot new cryptocurrency to get rich. Truly, these 3 steps will put you in such a good place. First, save your money. Save more than you spend. See if you can save more than 10%. Even the act of starting to be cognizant of trying to save your money helps in so many ways. It might actually make you realize, like, hey, is there a way I can increase my income so I can save more money? Is there moves that I can make in my life that help me to put myself in a better spot? 2, invest your money. And we don't mean invested in the hot new stock, cryptocurrency, following
Ozempic.
Nancy Pelosi's. Ozempic, is that something? Hey, you can invest in every hot stock if you invest in an index fund. Index funds have been popular for the last couple of decades. Statistically, over and over again, they regularly outperform other methods, especially related to the stock market, that people do to invest their money. Yes, that includes, by far, financial advisors just putting together mutual funds and saying they can outperform the market. I think it's like less than 1% do over like a 20-year span. And the best part is they're low fees. So there's so many great parts about investing in index funds. Finally, number 3, know your numbers. Know how much you're spending each month, every year. Know your FI number. Know your Coast FI number. Even if you're thinking, I don't want to retire, I love my job. Still, knowing these numbers helps you not only work towards something, but also keep a sense of, hey, maybe I hit my Coast FI number. I can enjoy my work, but I don't have to worry if I get laid off. I can take a sabbatical because I know I have a little bit of money set aside for myself. I can take longer maternity leave. These are all options that open up to you once you start to be a little bit more cognizant of how you are spending, saving, and investing your money.
Exactly, Michelle. No matter what your values are, money, health, time, amplify those values. So managing your money well is important in living the life that you want to live.
Exactly. I think a lot of people, when they actually look at their values, the thing they want isn't necessarily something that's material. Maybe it's a house, maybe it's a car, but really a lot of times we have something special that's important to us, something maybe immaterial. But by saving money, by investing money, by having financial security, you can actually go and start to pursue those things. You can move from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. And Sammie and I are so passionate about this because we have seen so many people over the last few years, heard from people who listen to our podcast, who have said they have made small changes and have over the years made a huge impact in their financial security. This is something that you can do. And we're never going to be somebody who looks at somebody and tells them that they can't do it. It's not necessarily easy, but hopefully we've shown you that it's more simple than you might think.
I'm so passionate I could explode.
Community time!
Before we say goodbye, it's our community time. And if you guys are wondering what I'm doing with all this freedom that I've gained from being responsible with my money, it would be going to the car wash on a weekday to utilize my favorite thing, free vacuums. Now, I know what you're thinking. Free vacuums with a car wash almost sounds redundant. Not if you live in California. They charge you by the minute to use a vacuum, even though you paid for the car wash. It's insane. So when I can go to the car wash and then spend half an hour vacuuming my car with towels and free cleaners there, I am in an eternal state of bliss.
Hopefully that doesn't discourage you from thinking that Sammie is rich. She's a simple woman who loves a clean car. And honestly has lost too much time chasing down car washes with free vacuums. Hey, it's all about your values. Also, quick shout out to Tamara. She has been spreading the good news about our podcast at my mom's workplace, telling everybody she's a fan of Sammie and Michelle. And so we just want to give you a shout out because word of mouth share is also great. So if you're listening to this, tell your friends, share our podcast, send them the link to our website. Speaking of our website, it's going to have all the information from today. Again, we know this is what we said, simple but not easy. I highly encourage you, if you feel inspired, to start to look at that information and see what steps that you can make to start getting yourself to have a little bit more wealth in your life. Because we're all about building a wealthy spirit. Oh my gosh, full circle.
And most importantly, be sure to join us next time as we put down the rulebook and we rethink the status quo.